once again, and for today's video we will be following a different format. So if you've noticed, I have been quite busy for a while now, hence the lack of uploads. So if you'd like to check out the remaining upload schedule for the rest of the month, which of course I may deviate from that depending on how busy I am, you can check out the community tab. Moving on to today's video, we will just be covering the decks I use to reach infinite. I'm not showcasing these decks. I will showcase each of them in a different video. Now of course there are some decks that I use to reach infinite, which I'll just briefly go through them. I'm not going to talk much about them since they have already been showcased previously. Now the first deck of the day, and my favorite deck and my current go-to deck no matter what, has to be this, which is the Professor Valkyrie variation. The Valkyrie card is my favorite card in the entire game right now. I got Valkyrie not so long ago. Valkyrie has been a really great card for me, pre-patch and even post-patch. Pre-patch when you consider the fact that there were a ton of Fury decks, and Valkyrie was the best answer to those decks no matter what. They drop a 30 power red skull, which is now a 26 power red skull, clears it, goes back to 3. Now of course you have a way of playing around the deck, which is you do not want priority going into 26, and you have several plays to guarantee you a location. You have the Storm location lockdown, Storm turn 3, into Juggernaut, into Demon at turn 4. At turn 5 you have the Professor X play. You can go Professor X into Wasp. Depending on what you have, you could have already played a card beforehand at turn 4 or even at turn 1 or turn 2, a Sunspot, and you prepare into playing Professor X in there. There's just several different game plans you can work towards with the deck. That's why this is my favorite deck of the season basically. Now the Valkyrie play at turn 6 is, if you did not play Wasp earlier, that's Wasp into Ant-Man into Valkyrie. Now of course you need to make sure there was already a card played in that location beforehand, so your Ant-Man is able to get the ongoing ability. And if your opponent had 4 cards, meaning if it was a 4-4, usually without Ant-Man that's a 12 power. Now with Ant-Man, that's a 12 power in your opponent's side and a 15 power in your side, and that's what makes the Valkyrie plus Ant-Man play the best play you can work around with. If you also go Wasp into Valkyrie, then Demon. You don't want to play Demon before Valkyrie, you want to play Demon after Valkyrie, basically at your turn 6, which is also a very important play you can work around with. And Blue Marvel, of course, Blue Marvel is quite nice for the deck if you do not have your Ant-Man play, and if you don't have your Professor X play, you only play Blue Marvel depending on if you've already gotten your Storm location lockdown at turn 3 to turn 4, and you can as well just play Blue Marvel instead of playing Professor X to just give you that extra power, widespread power basically. Now you have several cards, and the main reason why I like this deck is each card has a reason that they're being played. Right? You don't just play a card because you want to play a card, you play a card because you're working towards a specific game plan going into your turn 3 to turn 4, or going into your turn 5, or going into your Valkyrie play into turn 6. That's why this by far is my favorite deck. Moving on to the second deck of the season for me, has to be the Dinosaur She-Hulk deck. Now of course remember what I said, these are the decks I used to reach infinite pre-patch, so a lot of my thoughts are going to be pre-patch, but for this deck I have to talk about post-patch because there is a card in the deck which is Queen Jet that has been nerfed and really affects this deck no matter what you may think of, right? Usually this deck before the recent patch was one of the more consistent decks that people used to reach infinite back then, and the usual power play was a double She-Hulk into Devil Dino going into your turn 6, right? Moon Girl turn 4, skip turn 5, then She-Hulk, Devil Dino in turn 6, and that usually outpowers a ton of things. Like it's a widespread power that you can just dump around different locations going into turn 6, and that was one of the best winning strategies for this deck. And now it has been totally wrecked with the Queen Jet nerf because cards cost a minimum of 1, meaning you can't have a 0 cost She-Hulk, going into turn 6. The minimum cost for your She-Hulk has to be 1. So you have a 1 cost She-Hulk, then another 1 cost She-Hulk. Devil Dino costs 5. You can't do that play anymore, right? So it's really wrecks such plays. Now, of course, as for me, what I'll just say as the better play right now for this deck, we need to turn 6, has to be Devil Dinosaur on 5, then a double mistake at turn 6. It's not as good as the way it previously was, but as long as it works currently, right, with the fact that you won't see as many arrows as you were seeing beforehand, now should be better, at least to a certain point. Now, moving on to the third deck for me has to be Cerebro 2. Cerebro 2 was one of those decks that I told myself I would never play, and it's quite surprising for me because Cerebro is one of the more consistent decks that I've used throughout the entire season trying to reach infinite. And if you want to hear all my thoughts about Cerebro, I'm not going to go straight into that. I already uploaded a video talking about Cerebro 2, showcasing the deck a while back. I'll leave a link to the deck in the description, or you could just check the top right corner of the video anyways. The other deck as well for the season has to be the Professor Moore Viper variation. You can check my previous Professor Moore video for the full breakdown of the deck. I talked about this deck a long time ago, and I finally used it on ladder because surprisingly Viper was one of the great cards that I have been missing for a long time, and I finally got Viper a while back, and I used this deck a lot back then pre-patch, and it was very consistent because you have the triple lockdown case scenario. You have the Ebony into Viper at turn 3 if you're unable to get your Storm play at turn 3, or you don't have Juggernaut in hand and you have Storm in hand. That's one play I like going with. Then you have the, of course, Storm Juggernaut lockdown play turn 3, turn 4. Then you have the Spider-Man into Professor X turn 4, turn 5. Several game plans you can work around with. Then you have Claw to supply extra energy, extra power, into a specific lane that is needed. It's a straightforward game plan. Like I said, I will showcase each and every single one of these decks. I'd like to give a few honorable mentions for decks. First one goes to Seraph Surfer. Now, this Seraph Surfer deck is quite costly, makes use of Zabu Silver Surfer, of course, and Wong, and a ton of full grey cards. A few other creators have already put out several videos about this deck. I'm not even going to talk about it at all. Now, another one goes to the Jane Jaw deck. Of course, I've showcased this deck a while back. Links in the description or the top right corner video. Then you also have Deathwave. Deathwave pre-patch was one of the more consistent decks that people were using to climb to infinite back then, and even post-patch has to be the best deck for Aero right now, with the Aero nerf being you can only move one card, the last card the opponent played this turn, basically. Now, of course, this is a really good deck for Aero because of Wave. Usually play Wave at turn 5, then you play Aero She-Hulk Death at turn 6, or you play Aero plus She-Hulk at turn 6, or you play Aero plus Death at turn 6. It's a really great deck, even right now. Now, the last honorable mention has to go to the negative Zabu Wong deck, which I previously showcased before. Now, this deck, of course, has few changes with Psylocke and Gambit being added into the deck. Now, they're just in the deck for extra consistency. Psylocke for in case you don't get the Zabu at turn 2 and you have negative in your hand, so that will be Psylocke turn 2, negative turn 3. And the Gambit is also a very nice and interesting side play which you can work with, which is Wong into Mystique into Gambit, going into your turn 6 or your turn 5, whatever, right? Now, pre-patch, you had issues with the Wong play, and that was before Aero was nerfed. Before Aero was nerfed, using Wong as a play was a lot much more inconsistent. Now, post-patch, I kind of feel that with the little number of arrows you see while climbing, the Wong plays now with this deck are much more viable than it was before, and that just gives negative a huge boost to climb the ladder easily now, right? Since you can go with your Wong plays, with your Wong into Black Panther into Solar play easily now than it was before. Thanks for your time, and as I previously stated multiple times, each deck will be showcased at a later time You can check out the upload schedule in the community tab, even though we've deviated from that a day, but I guess that doesn't matter. Thanks and have a great day.